We all know that feeling. It's scary to realize you're running out of gas. And imagine how much scarier it would be to realize you're running out of income in retirement. I'm Wes Wood, the income guy and founder and president of Wood Financial Group. And for nearly 20 years, I've specialized in helping hardworking Americans just like you reach their retirement goals through income-based financial strategies. And if you're looking for the right solutions to achieve your own financial goals, I can help. Just reach out to me directly at retiretv.com or by calling 855-776-0614 during today's show or at any time. You know, when we're taking a long road trip, you fill up the tank before you go, right? And if you're taking a very long trip, you probably stop and refill a few times. And in the journey of life, retirement is a long trip. But when it comes to financing it, is filling and refilling your tank over and over again really the best approach? And allow me to answer that. The answer is no. A much better approach is to have a financial strategy that allows you to make retirement income a renewable resource. And today we're going to explain exactly how that's done. We're going to cover why staying invested for growth is like burning fossil fuels, and how investing for income gives you a renewable resource strategy, and how a strategy that can protect you in many different ways. And joining me on this week's show again is David Scranton. And David is an investing for income specialist with over 30 years of experience. He's also a best-selling author and a television host. But before we get to Dave, let's talk more about what it means to fill up your tank for retirement and the eventual risk of running out of gas. Obviously, the fuel for retirement, for that retirement trip, is money. And in a sense, you spend most of your working life filling up that tank. You do that by putting money into your 401ks and investing there and taking other steps to save for retirement. And your top priority is to save as much money as you possibly can. In other words, you want to make sure your tank is full by the time you start retirement. And that's really smart, but only up to a certain point. Yes, of course, you should save as much as you possibly can for retirement. And yes, the more you save, the better you're going to be. But no, the idea is not then to just burn away your savings through retirement and hope that you've saved enough and watch it dwindle. If that's your thinking, you're probably putting too much focus on that lump sum and not enough focus on having the right strategy. And as a result, you may want to continue investing mainly for growth stocks and in the mutual funds right up to the day you retire and maybe even past it. But the problem is that with a strategy like that, it's based on the big unknown. And it puts a lot of risk on making one of the most common mistakes retirees make with their money, which is spending down their principal. And that can happen when you have a strategy that isn't generating enough interest and dividends to meet your income needs, or to tackle the major financial challenges that are going to crop up in retirement. Challenges like satisfying required minimum distributions, or dealing with inflation, or covering medical and healthcare costs, which typically increase with age. And how exactly do all these things threaten to drain your tank? And how can you avoid that risk? Well, I'll talk more about that in just a moment with Dave Scranton. And of course, you can reach out to me directly by visiting retiretv.com or by calling 855-776-0614 to receive your free retirement income kit. But right now, let's welcome back David Scranton. He's the founder of Sound Income Strategies and the Retirement Income Store. Dave, thanks again for joining me again.
Well, thanks for having me here, Wes, as usual. It's always fun. So you make it sound like growth is the worst thing in the world, right? But growth can't be all that bad. I mean, there's got to be some good to it, right?
I mean, growth isn't always a bad thing. Now, when we're talking about investing for income for folks that are getting close to, at, or in retirement, it is important to invest for income. But the time when to really invest for growth is, when you're much younger, when you have time to weather the storms of the market. Like if you're in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, and you're constantly adding to a portfolio through maybe payroll deduction into your 401k or 403b, that's really the time to invest for growth. Because if you've got 25, 30 years or so to break through some of the bad times of the market, then you need to be shifting towards income. So no, growth's not always a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, the dollar cost averaging, as you call it, usually does help on the way in for sure. But your problem is you're kind of sort of counting on, okay, I'm going to take some principal and it's going to grow back. So you're almost counting on, to use your analogy, Wall Street's going to refill your tank, right? And sometimes it does. But what happens if there's a leak in the tank, right? What happens in some of the years, Wes, then when the market actually drops? Because then it's even harder for Wall Street to refill your tank, isn't it?
Right, when you're liquidating shares of a mutual fund, let's just say through systematic withdrawals to live off the income, or even when you're not, but then you're going to be forced to at RMD age. If you're liquidating shares of those funds, you're dropping the amount of gas or portfolio or principal of that account in hopes that the stock market is just going to rebound. And it may work once in a while to recoup the losses that you've taken. But imagine if you've got a streak where the market stays flat for many years in a row, or even worse, if there's a down market and you're still taking those systematic withdrawals, you may never recover the lost principal because you're liquidating so many shares when the market was down.
Yeah, we had a market drop in 2018. We had one in 2020, right, when COVID hit. And of course, we had those famous 12 to 13 years at the beginning of the century when the market was underwater.
Yep. Yep, from 2000 to 2013, the market was flat with two major drops in between. And, a lot of folks that are retired now, remember going through that when they were in their working years, adding money to a portfolio. But a lot of folks that are retired now, they've seen some good years in the market, but we all know that that's not going to continue happening many years in the future.
Yeah. So I love your renewable resource analogy. I think it's great, but I think it might make sense for you to explain one more time to your viewers why it's truly renewable, like renewable energy.
Right. So renewable energy or renewable income in a portfolio is, if you're investing for fixed income, your interest and dividends are fixed, meaning they do not change. They always show up in the portfolio. As a matter of fact, if you look at a brokerage statement that's paying interest and dividends, you can see, hey, here's the estimated annual income that the portfolio is generating. And we know that, year over year, those interest and dividends are going to continue to just appear in the portfolio. Whereas investing for growth, we're just putting our hope that the market is going to give us some returns. Whereas investing for income gives us the opportunity to see those interest and dividends continuing to reappear, just like that renewable resource when it comes to energy. And Dave, stay with us. We're going to talk more in just a bit. But coming back after the break, I'm going to talk more about why investing for income is the key to making retirement income a renewable resource.
A fiduciary is someone legally obligated to act in your best interest. Doctors, lawyers, and some financial advisors are fiduciaries, but not all. When you work with Wes Wood and his team at Wood Financial Group, you are working with fiduciaries. They help clients create customized investment portfolios based off their retirement goals. If you're ready to work with a fiduciary, visit retiretv.com and schedule a free, no-obligation conversation with Wes or a Wood Financial Group advisor.
I'm David Scranton. During my career, I found that most baby boomers have done a great job growing their retirement savings, yet many don't know how to convert their savings into steady income. And that is why I built the Retirement Income Store, to help hardworking Americans preserve their assets and establish steady streams of income.
If you're 55 or older, please claim our free Retirement Income Kit, chock full of information you need to know to get steady income during your retirement. Call 866-714-7377, online at theretirementinComeStore.com.
Welcome back. I'm Wes Wood, the Income Guy, and today we're talking about making retirement income a renewable resource. So far, we've talked about how staying invested for growth during retirement is like burning fossil fuels. It can put you at a risk of running out of gas, or in this case, even worse, running out of income. Now, let's talk more about a less risky, more dependable alternative. In a nutshell, the alternative is a strategy based on generating a renewable income from a reliable source. It's similar to the principle behind renewable energy alternatives like wind and solar. The idea is not having to deplete your energy source and then replenish it the way you would refill your gas tank or your oil tank, or even restock your firewood. Instead, the idea is to have a system that generates renewable energy from a secure source, a source that you can count on when it's properly maintained. In the energy world, those items include things like wind turbines and solar batteries. In the financial world, they include things like individual bonds and bond-like instruments and all the other financial tools that make up an income-based portfolio. And depending on your risk tolerance, these tools might include only contractual investments where your principal is protected in writing. But if you don't mind taking a little bit more risk, there are non-contractual options that work pretty much in the same way, where they generate a return in the form of interest and dividends rather than growth in the form of capital appreciation. And as a result, they greatly reduce the risk of spending down principal by making your income a renewable resource. And it gets even better. As you know, when you power your home with solar energy, you can sometimes take some of that unused energy that you didn't use and sell it back to the power grid and make some money. Similarly, when it comes to investing for income, you may have opportunities to reinvest the income that you don't need into other income generating strategies. And I'll talk more about that in just a moment with David Scranton. But right now, here's another opportunity to reach out to me directly at retiretv.com or by calling 855-776-0614 right now to receive your free retirement income kit. Now let's welcome back income specialist David Scranton.
Hey Wes, you know, it's funny when I hear you talk about investing by contract, even though I'm an income guy just like you, the first thing that always comes to mind is bank CDs, right? But we've got to be careful because bank CDs are FDIC insured, so they're guaranteed against loss no matter what, at least in theory. And whereas most contractual things aren't quite that secure, they are a lot more secure than investing for growth, or, for example, investing for the stock market, even if you're using the stock market as an income tool. So you mind expounding on that for just a moment?
Yeah, right, Dave. And investing for contract means a few different things. When you're investing in contract by buying an individual bond, for instance, the company that issues that bond guarantees two things. One, they guarantee if you hold the bond to maturity, you're going to get the par value back. So if you bought the bond for par, for instance, when it matures, you're going to get all that money back guaranteed by the company. Of course, assuming there's no default or bankruptcies. And along the way, they're contractually obligated to pay you a fixed payment of interest along the way. So as an example, if a bond pays a certain rate of return that's posted on the bond, you know you're going to get the exact same income for the life of the bond until it matures or gets called. So the company has a contractual obligation to do so. The risk there is, of course, if you have a bankruptcy or default, which is why you need to really stay on top of any kind of investment portfolio.
So if you look at a risk scale of 1 to 10, right, where the risk of 1 might be a bank CD, 10 might be a growth stock, investing by contract is going to put you where in the maybe 2 to 3 range is a general rule?
Yeah, 2 to 3 range, and then you can dive a little deeper. So when you're investing for contract, when you're buying a bond, which is technically a loan to a company, you can really dive deep into the companies to find out their financials, their credit rating. Almost like the analogy of if you're a mortgage officer at a bank. Yeah. And if you're loaning money out to customers, you check out their credit score. And you can find companies that have very, very good credit. And of course, that's going to put you down at the 2 range maybe on that risk scale. And maybe some companies may not have as good as credit, but really good credit, that they're going to pay you quite a bit more in the form of interest every single year. And maybe that'll put your risk scale on like a 3 to a 4 range. That's right, Dave.
And it's funny because when people are shopping for financial advisors, they always want to look at track record. Well, if you're investing for growth, yeah, you need to look at track record because It's a crystal ball thing, and you have to find out if that advisor's crystal ball is better than the next guy's. But because this is more like credit analysis, like you said, like that person analyzing whether or not you should be receiving a mortgage, it makes it much more black and white, and you don't really need to have a crystal ball, which why as an analyst, I love contractual investing, as I know you do. But one of the big sources of pushback you often get, and I hear it all the time too, is, well, how do you create an inflation hedge? How do you get growth? So you mind elaborating on that for just a moment?
Oh, you got it. And I think that the whole idea of not getting growth or inflation hedge is sometimes a story concocted by growth investment advisors. They'll say, oh, well, you don't have much of an inflation hedge if you invest for income, but that's not true. Because think about it, if you're not spending all your interest in dividends, maybe you're just spending a portion of them, well, what you can do is take the difference that's not being spent to buy more in the form of income, therefore organically growing your portfolio through strategic dividend reinvestments. And that's not the only way. There's a lot of other types of income investment types of accounts that you can go into in investments, like BDCs and REITs, that when interest rates go up, you may have the opportunity to receive a higher interest or a dividend check in the form of income, which is also a way to have an inflation hedge.
Inflation hedge, sure. So bottom line, how do your viewers know when and if it's the right time to make that shift from growth to income philosophically when it comes to their money?
Right. Well, a lot of times it's close to at or in retirement. But some cases they can't afford to take a big drop. Maybe they've kind of hit the number that they need to as far as how much portfolio value that they have. And if they invest for income, they know what kind of income they're going to have and they can live off of that. So they can't afford to take a market drop. Or maybe their risk tolerance is, they don't need to be taking all the risk in the stock market because they're this close to retirement and they need to preserve what they have and invest for income in order to make sure that their income is certain to where they're not worrying about running out of money when they start spending those interest and dividend checks. But hey, Dave, thanks again. And coming up after the break, I'm going to share a fun analogy that nicely illustrates the difference between burning through those savings versus making it a renewable income resource. I'm Wes Wood, the Income Guy. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm Wes Wood, founder of Wood Financial Group. Did you know that one simple mistake can derail your retirement plan? Could you be making that mistake right now? By not making the shift from growth-based to income-based investing, you could be setting up your retirement plan to fail. If you're at or near retirement age, time is not on your side. One market correction could wipe out your life savings. Make the switch today so you can preserve your assets and generate retirement income you can count on. Visit retiretv.com to download your free retirement income kit from Wood Financial Group. Welcome back. I'm Wes Wood, the Income Guy. Hey, thanks for tuning in. We're looking at how investing for income makes retirement income a renewable resource. And we've covered the strategic differences between investing for growth versus income. Now let's clarify the whole thing with a fun analogy. Let's say you retire at 60 years old and you move to a little house in a new town. And let's say this town happens to have a law that says you can only heat your home with a wood-burning furnace, and you must use only the trees that are on your property for fuel. And you decide to go for it. So you begin by counting up all the trees on your land to determine if you have enough wood to last you 30 years. And it looks good. You do some calculations to figure out how much wood you can use every year without running out of wood. In the first years, you're very confident. You're so confident you heat your house to nice and cozy 72 degrees. But then a big storm hits, and it gets you thinking. You think, what if a tornado comes through and kills a bunch of my trees? So you get a little more cautious, and you start keeping your heat at 65 degrees to burn less wood. Then you go at the age of 70 years old to get a checkup from your doctor. And your doctor says, hey Bob, great news. You're healthy now as you were when you were 60 years old. As that may be great news, it makes you start thinking, what if I live past the age of 90 years old? Maybe I need more wood than just 30 years of it. So you get more cautious, and you start keeping your house at a 60-degree temperature. That means in these prime years of retirement, instead of enjoying your good health, you're cold and constantly worried. You spend the next 10 years like that. Then you turn 80. And guess what? Yep, your doctor gives you another great checkup. Now you're really worried, and you start keeping your heat at 55 or 50 degrees. You're still healthy, but you can't enjoy it because you're colder and more worried than ever about running out of your wood. That's a bit like the emotional turmoil people go through when they start taking systematic withdrawals from mutual funds and spending down the principal. It isn't just a matter of making it to age 71 and realizing you're broke. It's about all the stress and diminished quality of life in the years leading up to that. Now imagine if instead of wood, you had a windmill on your roof or solar panels on your home, and they were heating your home with a renewable energy source for all those years. And I'll talk more about that with Dave Scranton in just a moment. But here's another chance. Here's another chance for you to fix these problems and reach out to me directly at retiretv.com or by calling me at 855-776-0614 to receive your free retirement income kit. Now let's welcome back income specialist and founder of the Retirement Income Store, Dave Scranton. Welcome back, Dave.
Thanks, Wes. You know, it's funny. I've been there so many times pushing the limit where luckily I don't do this in my airplane, but I do when I drive my car, and you know that yellow light's on, you know you're close to E, and you're questioning whether that distance to empty calculation is really accurate or you're going to run out beforehand. But although you never really run out, there's a lot of stress and anxiety leading up to the time you actually find the gas station, is there not?
Absolutely. I think we've all done it. Either we've run out of gas before, or we've seen our gas tank get so close to E and we never think we're going to find that gas station. I can't tell you how many countless times I've driven down to Mississippi to visit some family, and I think I can make it to the very next city, and I believe I will. I normally do, but just the anxiety of seeing it go from maybe 20 miles to go, 10 miles to go, all the way down to E, creates a lot of stress and anxiety. And, when you think about that when it comes to investments, when somebody's draining their portfolio and just hoping for Wall Street to refill their portfolio, it's a lot like that gas tank going all the way down to E. Maybe they won't run out of money, but just the fear of potentially running out of money can put a lot of stress and anxiety in those years of retirement that really should be enjoyed without having to really deal with that sort of thing because they're just invested the wrong way.
I think you did a great job with that too, with the heating your house based upon the wood, the trees that you have in your yard. That's great. That's the stress and anxiety side. But let's take a minute and let's explore the other side of it, the positive side. The feeling of knowing that you have unlimited gas to fuel the car. You could drive from Nashville to LA and not worry about it. The feeling of knowing you have enough renewable energy coming in every single day to heat your house to whatever level you want. How good does that feel?
Well, I've seen it with a lot of clients. I've seen it with so many clients that have a sizable portfolio, and we look at how much interest and dividends that they're generating, like a renewable resource, like having unlimited amounts of trees or having solar panels on the roof, never having to worry about turning down the temperature down to 55 degrees just to conserve the trees and the forest, like I mentioned a minute ago. By having that renewable resource of interest and dividends more than they need, I have a lot of clients that do fun stuff with it. So if you have more income coming in than you're actually going to spend, I have clients that are giving money to their kids. I have some that are funding even 529 programs for their grandchildren. And like I'm going to talk about a show in next couple of weeks here about rewarding yourself in retirement. I even have some clients that buy that 1960 Mustang that they've always cherished to have when they're a child because they know that they have plenty of income coming in to do all those kind of fun things.
Yeah, and isn't it true that, if you had to go to your spouse and say, look, honey, we're going to take 50, 70 grand out of our principal to buy that car I've wanted since I was a teenager, she might look at you with furrowed eyebrow and think, are you really? Come on, if you're doing that, then I'm going to go and redo the kitchen and spend twice as much over here. But the reality is, if it's a renewable resource, if it's just taken 1 year's worth of income or 2 years worth of income, that's a much easier conversation, and that's a much easier decision, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, let's just say you had a mutual fund portfolio that went from $500,000 and grew $250,000. Well, you're not necessarily going to celebrate by liquidating some of those shares to buy that car, that kitchen. And same is true that if it goes from $500,000 down to $250,000, gets cut in half, then you're definitely not going to do that, and you may even cancel some of those things that you plan to do. But if you have interest and dividends coming in from $20,000 to $25,000 a year, and maybe that sports car cost you $50,000, well, you just save up those interest and dividends that have been renewing every year in the portfolio and spend it on all that kind of fun stuff. But thanks again, Dave. I'm Wes Wood, the Income Guy, and thank you for watching. If you have any questions about anything we've covered on today's show, please reach out to me at retiredtv.com or by calling 855-776-0614. Thanks, and we'll see you again next week.
A fiduciary is someone legally obligated to act in your best interest. Doctors, lawyers, and some financial advisors are fiduciaries, but not all. When you work with Wes Wood and his team at Wood Financial Group, you are working with fiduciaries. They help clients create customized investment portfolios based off their retirement goals. If you're ready to work with a fiduciary, visit retiredtv.com and schedule a free, no-obligation conversation with Wes or a Wood Financial Group advisor.